Imagine walking into your backyard on a morning where the air is so cold it stings the back of your throat. The grass is brittle, coated in a white, crystalline frost that crunches like broken glass under your work boots. Your neighbors are still asleep, their heaters humming, draw an expensive current from a grid that could flicker out at any moment. But you are walking toward a small structure at the edge of your property. You pull back a heavy, insulated door, and the air that hits your face isn't freezing. It smells like damp earth, crushed tomato leaves, and the sweet, heavy scent of blooming citrus. It is 75 degrees Fahrenheit inside, and the only thing powering this heat is the ground beneath your feet and a coil of copper buried in the dirt. For decades, we have been told that to grow food, we must buy into a massive, fragile system. We buy the plastic-wrapped seeds, the synthetic fertilizers made in distant factories, and the electricity to keep our greenhouses from becoming icy glass coffins. We've been conditioned to think that nature is something to be fought, conquered, and outsmarted with chemicals. But there is a different way. It is a science that was studied at the turn of the century and then quietly shelved as the era of cheap oil and industrial farming took over. It is called electro-culture, combined with passive thermal mass. It sounds complex, but it is as simple as a piece of metal and a pile of stones. Take a look at a standard 12-gauge copper wire. It is soft, heavy, and has a bright reddish-orange glow when the sun catches it. This isn't just a conductor for the local power company. It is an antenna. When you wrap this wire in a specific spiral, a clockwise vortex known as a Lakovsky coil, and point it toward the sky on a wooden stake, you're tapping into the atmospheric energy that surrounds us. This isn't magic. It is the utilization of the Earth's natural electric field. Every square yard of the atmosphere holds a voltage. By placing these copper lightning rods in your garden beds, you create a subtle ion exchange. The soil becomes more porous. The microbes, those billions of tiny organisms that turn organic matter into plant food, begin to move faster. They thrive in this heightened electrical environment. You can see the difference in the plants. A kale leaf grown under the influence of a copper antenna isn't just bigger, it's thicker. It has a deep, waxy green sheen that feels like leather between your fingers. When you snap a stem, the moisture content is so high, it sprays a fine mist of sap. The roots of these plants don't just grow downward. They explode into the soil, reaching out like white, fibrous fingers to grab every mineral available. While the neighbor's garden is struggling with aphids and powdery mildew, your plants are vibrating with a level of health that pests simply find unappealing. Insects look for the weak, the stressed, and the dying. A plant fueled by the Earth's natural current is a fortress, but the copper wire is only the first half of the equation. To truly break free from the store-bought life, you have to master the sun. This brings us to the first core system, the thermal battery. Most people build greenhouses out of thin plastic or glass and wonder why they freeze at night. Glass has no memory. It lets heat in, and then it lets it right back out the moment the sun goes down. To grow food in a Zone 5 winter, you need a system that remembers the sun's warmth. Picture a row of 55-gallon steel drums painted a flat, matte black. You fill these with water, simple, clear water from your garden hose. You stack them against the north wall of your greenhouse, where they sit in the direct path of the southern sun. All day long, as you're at work or tending to your chores, these drums are silently soaking up BTUS. The water inside doesn't boil, it just gets heavy with heat. By 4 p.m., when the shadows start to lengthen across the yard and the temperature begins its rapid trek toward the teens, these drums are humming with energy. As the air cools, the laws of thermodynamics take over. The heat stored in those hundreds of gallons of water begins to radiate outward. It's a slow, steady release. If you place your hand an inch away from the black metal, you can feel a gentle, pulsing warmth. This creates a microclimate. While the world outside is plunging into a deep freeze, your peppers and cucumbers are cradled in a pocket of steady, 60-degree air. You aren't burning propane. You aren't watching a meter spin. You are using the weight and density of water to bridge the gap between today's sun and tomorrow's dawn. This leads us into the second system, the earth-sheltered foundation. To build a truly sovereign growing space, you don't build on top of the ground. You build into it. If you dig down just 4 feet into the dirt, you reach a place where the temperature never changes. It doesn't care if there's a blizzard on the surface or a heat wave that's cracking the sidewalk. The earth stays a constant, stubborn 50 to 55 degrees. By sinking the floor of your greenhouse below the frost line, you're wrapping your plants in the insulation of the planet itself. Think about the physical work of this. The smell of the overturned soil, dark and rich, hitting the side of your shovel. The way the dirt feels cool even in the middle of July. When you line these sunken walls with rough-cut limestone or even simple reclaimed bricks, you're creating a secondary thermal mass. These stones act like a sponge for the heat that rises from the copper-enriched soil. During the day, the sun hits the floor and the walls. At night, the stones join the water barrels in a silent chorus of heat radiation. In this environment, the growing season never ends. You aren't a slave to the seed catalog's planting dates. You are the master of your own climate. You can watch the snow pile up against the exterior glass, inches deep, cold and suffocating, while you stand inside in a t-shirt, pruning a grapevine. The grapes are heavy, dusty purple orbs that taste like wine even before they are pressed. You realize then that the forbidden nature of this science isn't because it's a secret, but because it's too effective. It makes you unnecessary to the industrial machine. It turns a suburban backyard into a high-yield calorie factory that runs on pennies and physics. This is the foundation of sovereign living, taking the raw materials of the earth, the copper from the ground, the water from the rain, and the heat from the sun, and weaving them into a life that no one can turn off. The third pillar of this silent revolution is the climate battery, a subterranean lung that breathes life into the soil when the world above is dormant. It requires no complex computers or expensive ducting. You simply take a length of 4-inch perforated drain pipe, the black, corrugated kind that feels sturdy and ribbed in your hands, and bury it in a series of loops 4 feet beneath your growing beds. This pipe is connected to a small, low-voltage fan powered by a single solar panel on the roof. During the peak of a July afternoon, when the air inside the greenhouse reaches a sweltering 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the fan kicks on. It pulls that hot, humid air down into the cool earth. As the air travels through the buried pipe, the surrounding soil acts as a heat exchanger. The earth, stripped of its chill, absorbs the summer heat, storing it deep in the dirt like a biological savings account. By the time the air loops back up into the greenhouse, it has been cooled to a refreshing 65 degrees Fahrenheit. You've just created free air conditioning, but the real magic happens 6 months later, in the dead of February. When the sun is weak and the air is 10 degrees Fahrenheit, you turn the fan back on. Now, the process reverses. The air travels through the pipes and picks up the heat you stored back in July. It emerges at the surface as a warm breeze, defrosting the leaves of your spinach and keeping the root zones of your fruit trees at a steady, life-sustaining temperature. This is the synergy where the copper wire and the thermal mass begin to dance together. When you have a soil bed that is kept warm by a climate battery and energized by a copper Lakovsky coil, the biology of the earth reaches a fever pitch. In a standard backyard garden, the soil goes to sleep in the winter. The worms burrow deep, and the bacteria become sluggish. But in a sovereign greenhouse, the party never stops. You can reach your hand into the soil in mid-January and feel it. It's crumbly, moist, and warm to the touch. It smells of deep forest floor and ancient life. Consider the humble earthworm. In this energized, temperature-controlled environment, the worms don't just survive, they thrive and multiply at 3 times the normal rate. Their castings, rich in nitrogen and minerals, are delivered directly to the root zones of your plants. As they move through the soil, they follow the subtle electrical paths created by your copper antennas, aerating the ground and creating tunnels that allow oxygen to reach the deepest roots. You are no longer just a gardener. You are the conductor of an underground orchestra. The implementation of these systems doesn't require a degree in engineering or a massive bank account. It requires a Saturday, a shovel, and the willingness to look at trash differently. Those 55-gallon drums can often be found for $10 at a local car wash or food processing plant. They are heavy, awkward things to move, smelling faintly of soap or pickles, but once they are scrubbed and painted black, they become the most reliable furnace you will ever own. The copper wire can be stripped from old household wiring or bought at a hardware store for the price of a steak dinner. When you begin to assemble these pieces, you'll notice a shift in your own perspective. You stop looking at the weather report with anxiety. A coming frost isn't a threat, it's just a change in the scenery. You start to see the weeds in your yard not as enemies, but as indicators of soil health. Dandelions, with their long, sturdy taproots, are reaching down to bring minerals to the surface. Minerals that your copper coils will soon help your vegetables absorb. The harvest from such a system is unlike anything you can find in a grocery store. A store-bought tomato is a ghost, watery, pale, and bred for the rigors of a 1,000-mile truck ride in a refrigerated trailer. A tomato grown in an electro-culture, thermal mass environment is a heavy, blood-red heart of pure nutrition. When you slice it, it doesn't leak watery seeds. It stays firm, its flesh marbled and dense. The flavor is an explosion of acidity and sweetness that lingers on the tongue. This is because the plant had the time and the energy to pull every trace mineral, boron, magnesium, zinc, out of the soil and lock it into the fruit. This isn't just food. It's medicine that you grew for the cost of a few pieces of scrap metal. As you stand in your backyard, looking at the glowing copper spirals rising from the green canopy of your sunken garden, you realize that the forbidden part of this science is simply its simplicity. There is no subscription model for a copper wire buried in the dirt. There is no monthly bill for the heat stored in a barrel of water. There's no update required for the thermal properties of a stone wall. It is a one-time investment of sweat and logic that pays dividends for a lifetime. Sovereignty is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but it has a very specific physical weight. It is the weight of a basket full of potatoes in October. It is the sound of your family eating a fresh salad while the wind howls at the windows and the grocery store shelves 3 towns over are empty. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that your survival isn't tied to a fragile global supply chain, but to the sun, the soil, and a few basic laws of physics that have been true since the beginning of time. This way of living is a return to a blue-collar wisdom that understands that the earth is not a resource to be mined, but a partner to be engaged. When you give the soil a little bit of warmth and a little bit of electrical encouragement, it gives back with a staggering, almost aggressive abundance. You find yourself with more food than you can eat, more health than you've ever had, and a sense of peace that no amount of money can buy. You have stepped out of the grid and into the flow of the natural world. You aren't just surviving, you're thriving in a kingdom of your own making, built with a shovel, a stone, and a single strand of copper wire.